When I was about 18, me and some friends took a road trip, about 7 hours or so, down to the Apalachicola National Forest. We were going to do some little car camping, drink a few ice cold natty lights, 18-year-old stuff. As such, we didn't want to be bothered by any park rangers, so we drove way deep into the woods. Got there, set up the camp, had said natty light. Me and a guy friend decided to go do a little exploring. So we walked about 100 yards from our site back to the main road, saw another path directly across from us, and started walking. Immediately we started seeing signs that someone had lived there for a while. Big bags of trash, stuff like that. Should have been a huge red flag for us to turn around. But 18, nothing could hurt us. So we get to this campsite of an older white guy living out of his van. Clotheslines strung up, coolers placed around it, a big gorgeous dog, I think maybe a golden retriever. We tried to back out, but he sees us and started talking. He's friendly enough, asks us where we're from, tells us about some cool spots to check out in the park. We ended up chatting for about 10 minutes and then go on our way. I kept thinking to myself, how odd it was that he gave directions in steps, not yards or miles. Guy always seemed to be off balance. Not stumbling drunk, but like he was walking on a balance beam, swaying side to side. Oh, and he was super excited to talk about national parks and forests where we were from. Okay, camping part over. Fast forward 2 months. Same buddy called me late at night and tells me to turn on TV to the news. I oblige. I see an old dude with a van. You see where this is headed, but I didn't. So I get pissed at my friend for waking me up. No, watch. And then I see the golden retriever. It all clicks. The man's name was Gary Michael Hilton. Convicted of at least 4 murders. He kidnapped and murdered a girl on Blood Mountain, Georgia, an older couple in Pisgah, North Carolina, and a girl in the Apalachicola at that campsite not long after we left. Yes, the very same places he had been talking to us about. Obviously, we called the cops. They put us in touch with the FBI, and we get flown down to take investigators to the campsite. Point out every spot we saw anything, tell them exactly what he had told us, and show them the places he described to us. I didn't find out until after the trial, but apparently they found what appeared to be partially destroyed human finger bones in an area near the site. Had to fly down again to testify. When I was young, aged from 5 to 11, my dad lived in an old log cabin about 15 miles west of Sheridan, Wyoming, in the foothills of Bighorn Mountains. Every summer when I was visiting, we would go up into the mountains, backpacking and fishing for 2 days every weekend. We would park the truck, hike into the remote area fishing for trout along the way, and make camp wherever we ended up. We encountered a number of strange, creepy things that got us into some scary situations with wildlife. But the one that sticks with me the most was an ancient, abandoned camp we found. We were hiking down a very steep slope to get to an area of a creek that had been dammed up by beavers, hoping to catch some big trout. I had climbed out on a rock ledge and was looking for a way down when I saw the stock action of an old rusty rifle sticking out of a tree about 10 feet above the ground. Dad and I had climbed to check it out, and we found a small cave at the base of the rock formation, only about 12 feet deep, which would make a nice natural shelter, but would be a really terrible place to set up a long-term camp. Inside we found a bunch of really old stuff. 3 heavy gauge unopened canned food, an old cast iron pot that had holes rusted all the way through it, a crusty old saddle and bridle set, and a very deteriorated heavy wool blanket rolled up tight with a leather belt. When we unwrapped the blanket, We found several personal items, including a rusty old cap and a ball black powder revolver, a leather satchel with lead pistol shot, a powder horn with no black powder in it, tarnished old cartridges, presumably for the rifle in the tree, a straight razor, and most unsettling was a shirt with holes in it, and over half of it stained with dried blood. As we stood there thinking about what all of this meant, it occurred to me how remote this place was, even at the time. It was July of 1985, and the fact that whoever owned that shirt has been very seriously injured, stuck up on a steep slope in the middle of absolutely nowhere, I got serious chills down my spine. The only thing that somewhat dated this fateful campsite was a pistol and the rifle, both of which were made sometimes in the 1870s, according to my father. There's no way of ever knowing what happened to the man who owned all of this stuff, but the fact that he or someone he knew was obviously shot twice with either a gun or arrows, and all of his belongings were sitting right there where he left them, possibly 100 years later. It was highly unlikely that he left that area alive. Discovering what amounts to a 100-year-old crime scene in a very remote wilderness kinda gave me the creeps. But mostly, it just made me sad to know how hopeless and alone this guy must have felt when he died. A few friends and I do a yearly camping trip in the Manistee National Forest in northern Michigan. One year, we decided to try a new spot by the river for easier access for fishing, kayaking, etc. Needless to say, this spot was very remote. Had to backpack in and drag our kayaks through the woods. This is all state land, so it's basically find a spot and set up wherever. It was early June at the time, so we weren't worried about people out there hunting or anything like that. We arrived during the day, our first day there. Set up a tent and hit the river for the rest of the afternoon. Got back right before dark and started a fire. Everything is peaceful, nice and quiet, until all of a sudden, a big glowing fire about 300 yards away. We started to hear chanting, and I looked a little closer and noticed a glowing, seems to be a burning cross. About 5 minutes later, gunfire erupts, and I mean erupts. There must have been at least 10 different guns going off just non-stop. The gunfire stops and we hear, "White power!" being yelled by, I'm guessing, at least 20 people. We left all our stuff and noped the fuck out of there real quick. Went back the next day and got our tent and boats, and nobody was in the area where they were that night. Hey guys, it's Horrorbank here, and I hope you guys enjoyed that little short narrating. I'm still pretty new at narrating scary stories or just narrating anything in general, so if you guys have any tip, just leave them down below. I take all criticisms, as long as you're not being rude. And yeah, thank you guys so much if you listened all the way through, and if you're not subscribed yet, be sure to do so down below for more stories in the future. Thank you very much. Have a good night.